speak at my church tomorrow, Professor Kehinde Solwazi.
Thank you, brother.
Bless you.
Let me say something real quick. I know this video is overwhelming. It's like the biggest secret been kept from you. The door is now open. It's kept worse at the end. So much of it's yet to come. I've seen it 3 times. And every time I see it, I'm affected by it. But the first thing I want to remind everybody, this is the 50th anniversary of Malcolm X's assassination. And it's interesting. We've had every kind of celebration around the civil rights movement. We've had Selma movement. We've had the president celebrating Dr. King. We've had all kinds of things around his birthday. We've had everything of civil rights. It's been pushed in the media. Now it's interesting. This is the 50th anniversary of one of our great leaders, and you hear hardly nothing about it. And so I just want to say this to you, if you don't know who Malcolm X was. What we're looking at is what he was really about, and that was dealing with our human rights. And I just want to kind of remind everybody, what are human rights? Because ever since our ancestors was brought here on this soil, we have been in violation. This country and a broader white community has been in violation of our human rights. And that's what Malcolm X was about. That's why he was assassinated. He was assassinated because he had the strength and fortitude to deal with truth. You see, he told us everything that's happening right now, he already said. He said you're going to have civil rights and the Supreme Court going to take it away. He said the lynchers will still be back, they may be in police uniform. Everything is going on right now, he had already told us that. And so one of the worst things you can do in the United States is tell the truth. That's the scariest thing in the world. Yes, it is. Particularly with racists. That's the one thing they don't want you to deal with, is the truth. And so this video, all 3 of them, is what we need, because we need to know the truth. And so when we look at Malcolm's human rights, and I just want to go over real quick, because people get confused. Human rights are rights that me and you and every living human being on the planet gets by the very fact of being human. If you're a human being, you have human rights by birth. It's not nothing that's given to you by the government or by a country. It's given you by the Creator, God, Him herself. That's where you get your human rights from. You get it because you're a human being. And so, if you understand chattel slavery, which is a slavery that deals with human beings being treated as farm animals and commodities, if you're going to treat human beings who have a 5,000-year history, and you're going to treat these human beings, if they're farm animals, you're going to take away all their human rights. I wouldn't even call slavery a form of bestiality. I don't even want to call it just slavery. I like to call it what it is. It's a monstrous crime. And you treat these human beings like that for 400 years, because I'm not stopping at the end of slavery. It got almost bad after slavery, which you'll be seeing in the video. And so Malcolm understood that. And Malcolm understood that the first human right we all have is the right to determine our own destiny. The right to life and the right to determine our own destiny. And so when black people are talking about voting rights, the state may give you, the paperwork, but you have a right to determine your own destiny. Whether it's through voting, whatever way it is, if you're a human being, you should determine your own community. You should determine your own schools. You should determine those things that make us a people and a community. And so anytime we start talking about human rights, people want to run from that. We get into nonsense about let's get integrated, let's love everybody. It's not about that. It's about us being human beings that's been horribly treated. I don't think any people in the world has been treated as bad as African Americans over the last 400 years. I mean, I ain't ever heard of women being forced breeded to make babies to sell. That's not even in our psychology. I mean, no people have done that. I done my work. I have never seen any people, anywhere, any culture that treated human beings any worse than we have been treated on this soil. And so Malcolm X understood that. The other thing that Malcolm X understood, he said that one of the human rights that we have the right to is our own knowledge, who we are, our own culture. You know, education, that's a fundamental human right. Our kids are not being educated, so they're not being given their human rights. So bad test scores and all that, that's a violation of our human rights. And the people who are in control of our kids have no intention of making our kids excellent. They have no intention. And so we continue to run around talking, let the schools do something. They don't have any intention to teach us. In fact, send your kids to school, they're crazier than they were when you left them at home. They know more, they're more positive. When you leave them at home, they're better than once they get to school. Once they get to school, race, white supremacy kicks in, and the next day they talk about what they can't do. I see our little kids. I mean, they're the smartest human beings on the planet. 2 years in Fresno, Clovis, Central, they're as crazy as all outdoors because they know nothing about themselves and not taught by people who love them, because our kids feed on love. And so by the time they come out of school, they ain't ready to go to jail. That's my point. The other thing that Malcolm told us about human rights is the right to self-defense. Now everybody gets crazy around it. Malcolm, he's militant, he's violent. Well, what do you think I like to call them the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan kills black people at will, bomb our churches, lynch us, and they talk about, Malcolm X talk about self-defense. That is so, it's so off the block. Where you have the criminal accusing the victim of the victim trying to save himself. That's what you got. So when we talk about human rights, we got to talk about, we can't continue to have our kids shot to death. That's a violation of our human rights. It is not just a Fresno issue, it's a national issue. It's a way to maintain domination and control over our community by taking out our young men. And so if your young men are gone, your soldiers, your security is gone. The men are your foundation and your security. That's the role of us men, is to protect you women and children and make sure your community is safe. That's our job as men. You know, when you have needs, food, clothing, shelter, our first role as men is make sure you have that. Amen. Make sure you live in a community that's safe, that your grandmother can walk from here to there and not be mugged by some criminal. So Malcolm made that clear. We have a right to defend ourselves by any means necessary. Now, don't walk out of here saying I'm telling you to go to armed struggle. I didn't say that. I'm making sure the agents know what I'm saying. I know we have some presence of that. So in saying that, we have a human right to defend. In fact, that Second Amendment belongs to us too. To bear arms, it belongs to us too. And so when we talk about survival, we have to talk about some form of making sure we survive by the right of self-defense. The other right that Malcolm talked about is the right to own and control our money and our resources. He calls it self-help, self-reliant. I'm saying to black people, we're going to have to sacrifice if we want our children to survive. So we're going to have to begin to do things that we never thought we needed to do. And that's one, is to pool our money and our resources. Begin to trust each other and respect each other. And if I have to sacrifice a little bit more money to get some food, I'm willing to do that if it's going to help my community. Because see, if a brother is in business or a sister's in business, at least one or two people is self-reliant. If they got kids now, or if they hire somebody from the neighborhood, you got an assurance of your people being hired. Now, every group looks out for their own interests. Let's be clear on it. Every group looks out for their own interests, but us. But us. And so we have to talk about building businesses, hiring our own people. Nobody else is going to do it. And so we have to talk about business and self-reliance. That's one of the great things that Malcolm talked about. Malcolm, my hero, y'all.
Yes, he is.
I gotta tell y'all. And another human right is right to justice. And justice means that if you must go by the law, you must make that law. And justice applies to everybody the same. If you do the crime, you do the time. It's not a color thing. Wherever justice is there, you have to